Welcome, beautiful people, to season 3, episode 13 of Jahmi Roc's Jottings. This seriously silly space for intentional musicology, sonic joy, and the kind of reggae and broader musical insight that'll keep your mind rocking and your thoughts swaying. I'm your host, Jahmi Roc, also known as Racquel Bernard. And today I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Nikita NuclearBlackness, DJ Papalotl, and Reggae Moms. We are so happy to welcome back Daniel T. Neely, aka Dan, for a conversation of Jamaica's original popular music, Mento. And along with Dan, we are welcoming back to the show Dale Dizzle Virgo. Now, if you caught our season 3, episode 10 conversation, you'll remember that Dan is an ethnomusicologist whose work spans the musical worlds of Jamaica and Ireland. He's best known for his landmark dissertation on Jamaican Mento, the island's first commercially recorded popular music. And that night, Dan took us to school, receipts and all. We talked about what Mento actually sounds like, the difference between Mento ska, reggae, and dancehall, the famous hill and gully rhythm that has been making its rounds. We dug into the slackness versus vulgarity debate, the politics of calling Mento calypso for the tourist gaze, and how Mento quietly lives inside the DNA of so much of Jamaican music that came after it. And as for our other guest, Dale Dizzle Virgo, now you've heard his voice all over season 2. He interviewed me twice, and then I also talked to him about One Drop and various other beat patterns that are in Jamaican popular music, especially reggae. Jamaican born music producer, engineer, technologist. His work sits as the intersection of sounds and systems rather. He is the founder of the Dizzle Lab and DZL Records. He has built a full creative and technical ecosystem for artists producing, mixing, mastering records, while personally architecting the cloud infrastructure, websites, and release tools that power his roster. So he's definitely very holistic. He has over 26 years of experience as an IT expert alongside a lifelong career in music. He has a rare dual fluency. He can craft a rhythm and build a platform that delivers it to the world. So I'll leave it there for our two guests. Welcome. How y'all doing? How y'all doing?
Hi, bless up. Thanks for having me. I
Of
appreciate it.
course. Of course, our pleasure. How's life been treating you, Dan?
Things are going all right. I can't complain.
Okay. Good.
Congratulations on your album launch, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Love like liberation, y'all. Run it up. Run those numbers up. Play it everywhere. Play it while you sleep. Just listen to it. Vibe with it. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And so today, before this podcast, we listened to the Jolly Boys album that you, Dan, and Dale worked on. So excited to talk about that. And before we take our complete dive into modern mento, which is our topic for tonight, I wanted us to take a moment to reflect on the current events in the Jamaican popular music world and its diaspora inserts. So DJ Papalotl brought this to our attention in our group chat. And there was, I think it's the Reggae Jam Festival had that horrendous effigy of a black woman on head top
Oh
on the
God.
stage. hmm
Oh,
And
oh.
I went to the comments
Without a head.
immediately, and
Without a head.
without a head, and I went to the comments immediately, and of course, my professor, Professor Donna Hope, was in there like, "This is inappropriate. Come on, in a white European space, you all could have like hired dancers if you wanted some head top in the space. You could have hired dancers." And so I just wanted to bring that, for us to discuss as a little opener, and then we can kind of transition into that idea that going back to that idea we talked about last time when it comes to vulgarity and mental, we can kind of transition in that way. But what were your thoughts, our guests?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. Can you fill me in?
Oh,
Oh, you okay? Okay, no
No,
worries.
I haven't seen.
Let me see if I can. I don't know if they scrubbed the internet already to take it down.
no, they've been taking forever to take it down. They have issued a very, very surface, superficial, like we're sorry, but there's the post still was standing. Nikki Z, if anyone knows who Nikki Z is, she's a big media radio as well as like media influencer. And, she was also posting about it, about how they issued an apology and how this is so disrespectful to the culture, the lack of knowledge of what is reggae music culture versus dancehall culture, the fact that they did like they did a Phantom Moja send off in front of this I don't know if it was paper mache, but it's basically
Here's the video. Here's the
a
picture
black
of it.
woman, basically from the waist upside down. Doing like what
It's
you would normally see in many dance hall videos, right?
You
But
seen
if
it,
you
Dan?
see, there's no head. There's no head. The both sides of the booty cheeks. They didn't even have the booty cheeks clapping in synchronization. That right there already told me a lot. You know what I'm saying? Because it was like there's no head. It's not a full body. It's a twerk section, but you're doing a send off for Faten Moja, a Rasta man, and on Selassie's birthday, July 23rd. Like this is just a mishmash of so much um oh my god, like over the top stereotypes.
What
uh
my first question when I look at this picture is this supposed to be a joke?
no, this is like a section at Reggae Jam Festival, and this is like obviously a stage. This guy, he's on the mic, he's DJing, like it sounds like he's DJing on a dancehall rhythm. And meanwhile, like I said, these, like the legs and the booty cheeks, there's strings that are being pulled back and forth, and there's no head, there's no body. It's literally, I don't know if it's made out of paper mache, but it's obviously some kind of pinata type structure, craft, that is just so tasteless. It's so tasteless. Um, because I agree with Jahmi Roc. Like they should have just hired dancers. It would have been better to do that. And it just takes me back to the koi women that were that were just taken all over the scene in Europe in the late 1800s, like with these human exhibitions of these women naked, because the fascination was all about the buttocks. And
In
that's
Belgium,
why I'm
right?
making this comparison. Right. It's just this morbid fascination with the black female body. And it isn't even a complete body. And apparently the person who is the CEO, or the owner of the festival, is a European woman. And they've been, I'm not sure if the thing's been taken down on the festival itself, but the post, people were requesting that the post be taken down. Reggaeville is like a co-sponsor of this, and Reggaeville, I believe, is based in Germany. And it's just ridiculous how insensitive and beyond insultingly inappropriate this thing is, especially because it doesn't seem like there was like no, like they didn't ask anyone who is of Jamaican, of a Jamaican background. They just really just put a bunch of stuff together that was just so
But this lands
um,
to a bigger problem. This, let me tell you a big problem I have. I have a big problem where, people who are, well, except for except for Dan. Dan is honorable Jamaican. But people who are not Jamaican and not of our culture appropriating and representing our culture
yes,
and
yes,
not understanding it. You say at least Dan, him studied, him know more about Jamaican music than enough people. But
right.
this also shows what people think about the culture, the impression. And it's not really, for us, it's deep rooted. We're saying deep in our culture. It's not just about dancing or gyrating. There's a lot of cultural things about it. Now, for other people, it's just okay. A woman put her head top upside down, and they just jump onto the bandwagon, think, okay, maybe we can do something cool. And culturally, in other cultures, people just, do anything. For example, like, in America, you guys roast your presidents, right? And do all these Family Guy stuff and say, okay, this president is gonna die and all of that stuff. But in other countries,
Not
like,
that
how
one.
dare you say that?
That's sacrilegious, yeah, basically, right? I mean, it's no different than when it's Cinco de Mayo, which is not even a big Mexican holiday. It's just an American, like St. Patrick's Day, right? Like these are just all drinking holidays, really, in the United States. And so people, you got like frat boys in college putting on the big sombreros, like, you know, that the sombrero thing is like it's not even like every part of Mexico. Like Mexico has so many different regional, um, musically regional cultures of music and just the whole the stereotype again, just focusing on on the superficial images that they really think represents the culture, right? It's done so many times. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I think is interesting about this conversation, and I have a few different things to say. Uh, it's very nice for Dizzle to say that like, I'm an honorary Jamaican or whatever. Um, uh, and but like I have done a lot of research on Mento music specifically, and learning about Jamaica and sort of learning what Jamaica is as a sort of place and a people and a culture is hard, and it's full of contradictions, and it's full of a lot of local knowledge that's difficult to communicate unless you've actually experienced it. Now, being somebody who knows about Mento music, and uh, I know about Mento in sort of all phases of the game. Um, and one of those phases of the game, which I think I like to downplay its importance, but a lot of people give it a very solid spot, are the recordings, the records. And I think I said in the last podcast, and I'll say it here again, that ownership of records is a very hollow way of understanding a music or its culture. In order to understand, a music or its culture, you actually have to get there and talk to the musicians, and then sort of be around them and see what they do and participate, as best as you can, and meet the people who play the music and produce the culture on their own plane, which takes a lot of time, and it's hard to do. And you sometimes have to humble your own opinions on things in order to understand it in a smart way. And I find that people who are record collectors tend to buy records and feel like they have a stake in the conversation. And ownership of an object, I don't think confers that. Just because you own a record doesn't mean you know anything about the record and where it came from. You just like the
Right.
music, and it's fine.
Right.
And
Um,
also in reference to that person owning the festival.
yeah. Well, so I look at that festival, and so like that sort of paper mache or whatever it was strikes me as being very similar to other sort of paper mache, effigies that that's I'm not using that in a negative sense, but like caricatures that I've seen in other European festivals, and so
Exactly.
in a sense, it's unremarkable. But
Exactly.
at the same time, I look at it, I'm like, well, if it's if I mean, like I can think of I've seen so like I think of a guy like Uziman. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Uziman. He's a I think he grew up in the Bahamas, and he's a white guy, and he like grew up speaking, like he can speak patois, and like he understands dancehall music and reggae music really well, but he's a comedian, and he'll do he'll be really funny about and really smart about his critique of like reggae music or dancehall culture or whatever because like he grew up in it and he understands like where the boundaries are. And when I look at a guy like Uzi Man, and he can make fun of things. He can chat really well. Like he'll throw down a rhythm and he can like actually like rhyme over it. It's great. But it his when he makes fun of dancehall music, it's funny and smart. And when I look at like something like you just showed me, taken completely out of context, but like when I look at it, it sort of looks sad and minimizing. And so if the festival has gotten a lot of critiques from, just anybody, but if somebody like Donna Hope comes along and critiques it, well, they should like sit up and take notice and really recognize that maybe like, that person's investment and in insight into the culture is off the mark. And so they should act quickly and remedy the situation. And it just doesn't seem like they've done that.
But that's what's adding the fuel, the fact that they're not acting quickly. And I
Well,
think that
it's ridiculous. Is it? And this is a dance hall festival or a
no,
reggae
it's a
festival?
reggae. It was called Reggae Jam. But that's the thing
Then what
about
are they doing?
European
What are
festivals,
they
Dan.
in
You
it
said
for?
it.
What are they in it for?
You said it. I mean, I've played in a few of these festivals, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the circus feeling. Like European reggae festivals have a little bit of a I don't want to say circus, but almost like a
I know what you mean.
carnival-ish
Yeah,
feeling,
I know what you
right?
mean.
And
Sure.
there's this element that, because there's like Bob Marley paper mache statues. I mean, I'm just saying like there's like Rotterdam will do that, right? Like they'll do paper maches of like Bob Marley with the guitar. They've done paper maches of oh my God, I'm trying to think of other reggae symbols. And I think what for someone like me, who has been to UE and I went to Michael Teachers College, I
Mhm.
feel the same way. I feel like, oh my God, like this isn't something you see in Jamaica. Like there's no paper mache of Bob Marley. They don't do
No,
these kinds of crafts, right?
and you know what? It was very interesting that you mentioned St. Patrick's Day because I am very very involved in Irish traditional music,
Mm-hmm.
like super involved in it, and sort of. But I live in America,
Right.
and there are people who are Irish American musicians who take like the traditional music of
Mm-hmm.
Ireland extremely
Mm-hmm.
seriously
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
are very
Yeah.
respectful towards it. And then
Yeah.
there are people who play like fast and loose with it and like commoditize it in a particular kind of way.
Right.
And it's like repulsive
Right.
and it doesn't represent, sort of what I identify as being
But
sort of Irish music.
the bigger
But like
problem here,
You go to Ireland, and like the way Irish Americans like do their thing and claim Irishness,
Right. Right. It's
is
so different.
completely foreign to like how they think about it.
Right.
Like it's a very strange and different kind of not just culture. I mean, like the politics are different, and like
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
well, hold
it's
on, the
just
bigger problem here is, I mean, the main problem is really, you know, I mean, people are saying, I'm looking on X right now, and people are talking about, this is what happened when you fly the gate and you do the gatekeeping and all of that. The bigger problem, I mean, I get everything is just really the representation of the culture, and with every culture, you have to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have a Jamaican representing Chinese culture, you know, and trying to export or promote it in a certain way that contributes Chinese culture.
but but
You know?
but at the same,
And
I mean,
also, which is also important in the case of, where you have like a subject topic, for example, mentor. You have mentor. You're talking about mentor music or reggae music or whatever, but you don't have anybody to consult or to advise. I mean, the business of ensuring that things are organized and planned properly. All of that is gone out the gate these days. People don't plan things anymore. People don't ensure and do anything properly. People just do. People just come up with the idea, like probably some marketing person in Switzerland said, "Oh, maybe we can do this. I went to Cinco de Mayo and saw this pinata, blah blah blah. Maybe we
Right.
can do a
Exactly.
Jamaican version of
Exactly.
this and so on."
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
then again, whilst we might be upset about it, and rightly so, I mean, we are given too much, non-participants control over our culture. That's a bigger problem. It's not that they did it, they are doing their expression of what it is. So why have
Mm-hmm.
we given reggae jam promoters, the license and the ability to represent Jamaican culture or to represent us? That is a problem. No, they can do anything. Anybody can come with any bright ideas. They
But
could
it's
even
like that one festival. What is it? What is it? Bumbleclot or there's some festival, right? That is using a Jamaican cuss word that would never ever happen in Jamaica, just because it's so illegal, right? Like how many artists have been arrested or fined because they
Would it still be illegal to call it bumbleclot? I mean, people wouldn't do it just because
But
it
in
just
Jamaica,
wouldn't.
you can't because
you
You
can't.
can't
laws. You have laws against that. Like you go to jail if you're going on stage and
Yes,
curse on the
still.
stage.
I mean, like I know
yes,
Peter Tosh had a
Even
yes,
even
song,
hip hop artists go to
bumbleclot.
jail, and all of that
yes,
So you go to
because
jail
we
yes,
over
have.
you go to jail over a curse word? That's ridiculous.
yes.
I
But
mean,
that's
the
but
thing the
that's
thing is that is our culture. I mean, there's
right, right.
standards that we have, whether they are enforced or not,
Mhm.
and I mean, they're passed down by our colonizers. I know
I
you
was
guys
just about to say,
colonizers.
even though it's coming from that type of propriety, it's still the fact that that's where the disconnect, right? Like if
Right.
you really understood
Makes
Jamaican
sense.
culture, you understand you don't have to be Jamaican, but if you really, really appreciate the culture, then you would know that you can't do that in Jamaica. And to do it outside of Jamaica is it's whack because it's a misrepresentation in
But
some
but
Right,
but
ways,
right.
but
right?
hold on, but
One
hold
second,
on.
y'all.
But
I want to
this
hold
hold on,
the
hold
I
on,
want
hold
to
on. This
pass
comes
the
back
mic
to the
to
same point. Hold on. This come back to the same point again about the Hill and Gully rhythm. You understand? It's the same vein. Now Hill and Gully rhythm come out and a bag of slack songs, and a bag of tunes talk about. We can even discuss that later on about sexual stuff, but culturally the song has a different meaning. But the Jamaican and the dancehall artists them put one bag of dancehall
Right,
songs on
right,
it. You
right,
understand?
right.
It's the same vein, it's the same thing. Right now, we're in an
And
era. I mean, people are pissed off and upset, but they're pissed off and upset at the wrong thing. But we should be pissed off and upset about that. But we need to be pissed off and upset about the root of the problem
Mm-hmm.
because we continue to have different versions of the problem.
right.
Yeah.
Nikita, let me hear what you were about to say because you formed your mouth to talk a couple of times.
Yeah, I just wanted to, excuse me, I just wanted to point out that to a point that DJ Papalotl made earlier around the objectification of Black women's bodies and the ways in which we're not seen as
Mm-hmm.
human. So I think it's important to note that in the context of what y'all are bringing up around the exploitation of Jamaican culture and so forth, there's still this underlying way in which Black women are disrespected and seen as
yeah,
sexual objects to be used and abused. And so um, when and we can, in the context of dealing with the femicide against a lot of women, and particularly Black and brown women, and femicide for people who may not know who are listening in is the systemic oppression and killing and murdering and abuse of of children and women. It's not just girls, but children and women. And
Mm-hmm.
so um,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to bring up or name that as a woman seeing this, especially if you are someone who understands the ways in which they cut up our bodies and would, you know, in order to understand gynecology, they didn't give us anesthesia, and the raping and the breeding that happened during enslavement and colonization, I think is really that plays a big role in why they would represent a Black woman without arms, right? Because we're monstrous. We are the other. we are queered in that way. We are pushed out of
You're
the norm.
savage. You're not human.
Exactly. And so I definitely agree and hear what y'all are saying, but I think it's important to name that they didn't take a Black man and put him up there. They specifically
Not
chose
this
the
time.
body of a Black woman. But if someone could point out a moment where a Black man is used in a sexual way, that doesn't happen as often as it does to Black women, because of the disrespect. The most disrespected person is the Black woman. And so I just think it's important that we know that in the context of dealing with femicide rising, the murdering of Black women, and the objectification and exploitation of Black women, that this really brought up a lot of thoughts for me around just the I'm just gonna say it, no disrespect to you, Dan, but the white man's imagination, right? The white man's imagination created what we know as colonization, this pedophilia, all these things that impact how people will then extract when they see something sexualized. They don't understand, or they don't respect, or they demonize sexuality while still wanting to exploit it. So that's just some of the thoughts. I'm sorry, I have a hard time jumping in.
Yeah,
I
you,
don't like to
you gotta
interrupt
take the
people.
mic sometimes, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But one thing that comes to my mind, I will say that while Black women are definitely over-sexualized in certain ways that Black men may not, the over-sexualization definitely happens for Black men as well. And I know that's not, you weren't trying to exclude and say that it doesn't happen at all, but I just want to name that. Because even in like tourist shops, you have like these really graphic souvenirs that are connected to Black men's bodies, right? Very phallic,
Especially the phallic area.
very
Yes.
phallic.
Yes.
Yes. So you have that, and then also the idea of this rent-a-dread idea for like when it comes to
Yeah, because a lot of white girls fetishize Black men. I've
right.
been fetishized a
Big
lot.
time. Big
Yeah.
time. Big
Yeah.
time. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
no,
I just wanted
seriously.
to bring that up as
That
like
happen both
it,
ways.
yeah, it
It
does.
it
I
does.
It does.
understand
It
that, but
does.
I understand that. I just, given that we were talking about this Black woman's image in this
Yeah,
moment,
no. I
you
don't mean
know,
to say that you were totally saying that it doesn't happen for men, but I was just naming that it definitely happens for Black women, absolutely. And in
Yeah.
this specific example, we're talking about Black women, but I just wanted to name the tourist part because it connects back to Mento and back to the tourist gaze in general.
Yeah.
right?
True,
Okay,
true.
thank you.
Like,
Yeah,
for example, a lot of Europeans go to Jamaica, right? And if you're selling Jamaica to somebody, or if you're selling Jamaica to somebody, how would you sell Jamaica to somebody? How would you?
you asking us?
Yeah. Or would you tell somebody to go to Jamaica and say, hey, all right. So if you go to a guy, you meet a guy on the street and say, yo, come to Jamaica, yo, Zin. I said, for real, for real. How would you sell him to Jamaica? What would you give
I
him
think
to?
it depends if they're like
It's
music
changed over
people.
time.
Well, yeah, but one of the common things, I mean, obviously sex sells, people
Right.
have a very sadistic view of an outlook of things, this is the world we're living in nowadays, come on. Game of Thrones is one of the biggest movies, TV shows out there. It took me about 5 times to rewatch it, because after a point when I reach somewhere, I'm like, but anyway, going back to, what I was saying.
How would
How
you
would you
sell
sell
You talk about
Jamaica?
Jamaica?
sex
They
sells. We're
sell
talking about
Jamaica
selling.
by saying, okay, come to Jamaica. You have some nice girls in Jamaica. You can party all the time, sound system, music, and so on. So,
You left out the ganja.
it's on the ganja.
Right,
It's a
right.
picture them never have a ganja leaf beside it. But, it's a reality of it. Also, let me just be devil's advocate, though, isn't it?
No, I don't like devil's
No, no,
advocates.
no. That is somebody's art, you know?
Fuck they
And as
art.
much as we don't like
That
it,
part.
and it's disgusting,
What are you
hold
talking
on,
about? The Rasta wooden sculptures
I hate
with,
that as well. All
oh
of it
my
is
God,
terrible.
right?
The Phantom Moja one that I saw, it's both of them. So what I'm seeing right here, a lot of people are focusing on that, and obviously that is front of stage, and obviously Reggaeville, who is a very premier blog in the reggae space. They are the one who are promoting it because let's face it, a lot of artists pay money to Reggaeville for promote themselves. So yeah,
Yes, yes,
we have a bigger
yes,
problem,
yes,
So
yes.
rather than just the what you see,
Surface
so
level.
the image and the representation of it is just deep rooted with people's the art is terrible. It's somebody's expression of art. And
Right.
that person should not be hired for any other gigs to just
Relating to reggae music or Jamaican
yeah,
culture or
I mean,
Jamaican
there needs to
music.
be standards. That's what I'm
Right,
getting at.
right,
I am not gonna get emotional and say
right.
or say you're race this or femicide and all of that stuff because people
What
have
are you
different views on that.
talking about,
See,
Neil? Of course
but
you have
hold
to
on,
get emotional
no. You have to look at things practically.
and
Listen.
emotionally.
No, but hold on, yeah. In all honesty, that's why I said let me play devil's advocate.
That's why I don't like those
People
advocates.
No, people. It's their expression. It's their art, and we are allowed to say, "Yo, it's terrible," and we and the outrage that we are put into it should make that person and the promoters be outraged. We need to attack that. We need to attack the root issue. You know, because sometimes when you put other labels to it that is not confirmed, it muddies the whole situation rather than dealing with the problem because it is terrible. It should not have existed. But let's bring it back to the mental side of it because it is related. Mental music, dancing, gyrating, tourists, Jamaica, and all that. It is related to the same kind of thing.
It's
Hmm.
definitely been generational. I mean, it even goes back to during the days of slavery when like the masters, made the slaves play music and dance. They wanted to see that shit, like the morbid fascination, like the morbid
Yeah.
fascination of like, oh my God, they're so free because we can't we the proprieties of what it means to be an English gentleman or a caballero, whatever, it's like those things are like we could never. It's not written in our DNA. It's not written in our social codes. It's all of that. There's so much. The religion, the Christianity, the whole being. What is it? How with Christianity being modest and not expressing sexuality and um, not understanding that most cultures are don't don't just experience things in just one dynamic. These things exist in multi layers of dynamics. Like, yes, people dance in ways. Yes, people are gyrating, people are moving hips, but the interpretation, I mean, the English are crazy, they're nuts. Like, um what
Was
is
it
it?
was it in England?
No, I
No,
think
it was
this is in Germany, right?
it
I
was in
think
Germany. Yeah.
no, but what I'm trying to get at is I'm going back to this whole like when you take it back to like the times of slavery and colonization, there's always been this fascination of seeing, like uh, uh you know African people as like, oh my God, like they're so free because they can move a certain way and there's this, it's weird, it's I don't know, like a psychologist needs to kind of analyze it in some ways because it's so it's, if you look at television, if you look at cartoons, if you look at how caricatures of black people and people of color and women, the way everything is drawn, it's all drawn, there's a very big sexual undertone,
Hmm.
even before cartoons were made for adults, right? Even in my opinion, cartoons have always been for all ages, right? It's just depending on what level of maturity you can pick up whatever the jokes, right? You as the child versus you as the adult getting the subtle things. But not trying to get off too much topic, but I think that there is this view that black people, people of color, are just like these sexual beings um that equals like no morality. And then
Right.
and then that's where like you know these missionaries and these churches and trying to come in, and you know they're not just doing it in Jamaica, they're doing it all over Latin America, and they're still doing it now, right? Like people
That's
go on
right.
missions
That's right.
and you know some guy just got killed a few years ago because he was like, I'm gonna go to that one island in the south of India
Right.
because
Oh
I
yeah,
must
I
I saw
remember that.
that.
right. I
I saw that.
mean, but I think that that's the part where it has to be defined by the people themselves, right? As opposed to like people outside of it defining. And I'm here as a non-Jamaican saying it, like to define like what all these movements mean. Like, what does it come from? What tradition?
Right.
What did it mean when people were doing it? Whether it's coming from Yoruba or Igbo people or Ashanti, like. Well, because these movements had significance, there were stories behind it in Africa, and those movements and stories still carried over and didn't die. So
Right.
I
And
think
I
that
would say, sorry,
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I would love to hear what Reggae Moms was about to input because, as our one of our dancers in the room, I've heard you talk about, the ways that people have sexualized you when you're dancing and you're like, no, I'm just gonna have a good time, right? So Reggae Mom,
Right.
what's on your
Can,
mind?
can I pop a quick question to Reggae Moms? Hi, Reggae
Yes.
Moms. I'm Dan.
Hi.
I don't really know you at all.
Hi, Dan.
Could you give me a little bit of background about yourself?
Okay, of course. My name is Reggae Moms. Well, my name is Heidi. People call me
Okay.
Reggae Moms. And I have been dancing since I was about 3 years old. I started off as a classically trained ballerina, and I studied from 3 until 10. And this actually feeds into our conversation. I had a female teacher from 3 up until 10. And I got a male teacher, and it completely sexualized the experience for me. And that is a part of who I am because I went on to continue to dance, which I do. I dance, I write. I'm also a stylist. I do lots of stuff. I live in Los Angeles, so you got multiple resource streams coming in to be
You were
able
juggling.
to put everything together. That's just a little brief capsule of me, but it tying into the conversation. Being sexualized while dancing has always been a thing. It has always been a thing, no matter what genre it is. And so when the initial conversation in a group chat came up, it was kind of just like, yep, see, this is the reason why I don't really go all in the way that I could go all in certain areas, is because I don't care. I don't want to be sexualized like that. And I know, oh, it's my body and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, of course it's my body, but I can't stop everybody else from doing what they do with their bodies. It's not even what they think, it's with how they act. And so it's sad that in 2026 stuff like maybe somebody's worst nightmare to somebody be completely up on stage just being treated like a piece of meat like that is a real
Mhm.
thing. And to Nikita's uh question about other portrayals, I haven't seen other portrayals sexually of men, but I have seen they all seem, all the portrayals. That was my thing. Why are they always so bad? Like and Dizzle talking about artistry. Like artistry, what is it? Abstract art? Like this, they're always crap whenever you see those things,
Yeah, and
and
you're
of
right.
course
You're right.
intentional,
But
but
you're
it's
right.
always crap. It is all like it's not even like like somebody really took the time, like it's a nice sculpture or a nice paper mache or a nice something. You know what I'm saying? If it would have
Yeah.
been nice ass up there, people might not even been mad. Like especially if dancers would have been doing the same thing, people, they might have had something to say, but then they couldn't. It would have been dancers doing it, and then we can go into what you're saying, Dale, about how artistry. Okay, dancers they
So,
got hired for a gig, and so yeah, so
so, so
it
just so just in terms of the object, you're critiquing the object, but you're also critiquing the importance that that object's being given. So if that object had more investment and pride of place, it would be more acceptable as it would if let me put it this way, if you had invested more fully into that representation, then it wouldn't be marginalized, and it's the marginalization that we're really just upset about.
it's the proprietariness of it. It's the marginalization of it. It's the gall to be able to put up a piece of shit like that. Excuse my language,
No, it
and
is.
it be
You ain't
okay.
lying.
Like
No, I get it.
you know what I'm saying? Like I can't put up a piece of shit in anything I do, let alone for a global stage and to be able to, the entitlement of it all. Like I could go down the list.
because because
Anything
put
that Reggie
because
was
because you
doing.
take pride in what you do, and
Yes.
putting up a piece of shit like that devalues your thing.
It's not so much that it devalues my thing. It's that it's my thing is gotta get value regardless. I have to
But
put
but
in
but
the
but but
level
what
of
I'm
that.
but what I'm
You
saying
are cultured.
what I'm saying is that representation sets a market value that is very low, and allows that representation to be put basically on a back burner. And
I
when they
don't
don't
know
put
that it allows it to be undersold. It allows it to be so cheap
right.
because it makes too much money for it to be on the back burner. It's not putting on it. It just makes it to be to where now it's when you get a festival like that, instead of getting a budget that can afford the proper stage to
Mhm.
and hire dancers and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm not gonna say that the guys was just total assholes and just decided to do that. But
No,
what I
but
do know is this
I
is what
appreciate
was
your point.
accepted.
I
This is what
appreciate
is accepted, and this is what's undersold. And answering your question is not. It's not devaluing the ability for people to make money, because it gives a larger margin for people to be
Right.
able to make money, because
right.
those things are sold all the way out and the tickets are not $5 anymore.
Right.
We're
So
not.
And they haven't lost any money. Reggae
They ain't
Jam
lost
has
no
Ah,
not
money.
lost
please,
any money at
so
not
all.
at all.
But,
Not
so
losing
but
money
we are
and
giving them
making
free
money.
promotion
this
now.
this is
At this
this,
point,
this
right?
yeah, this
Exactly.
is so that we have a bunch of different sort of touchstones for this argument. We have like a cultural touchstone, but reggae, Heidi, I appreciate your point. Like, this becomes a market argument as well, that I think needs to be recognized. But I like your point. Yeah.
For sure. And I would say, speaking of markets, let's deep dive completely now. Let's jump on
Hmm.
into the Mento. And I want to hear Reggae Moms and Nikita's reactions to the Jolly Boys album that you, Dan, and you, Dale Dizzle Virgo, were a part of creating. So let me tell you how I want this to go. I would love to hear from Reggae Moms. I'd love to hear from Nikita. And then I would love to hear from Dan and Dale in terms of like what the process was creating that album.
So let me just preface your critique by saying, please critique freely, because I'm fascinated to know, when we made the record, it was, there was a lot of hype around it, and like we were sort of in a bubble. And some of the critiques I got, oh well, some of the I got some criticism at the time, from a journalist who had come over from London. And then I heard people say nice things, and I was never really sure like what the message was. essentially, I think we did our best, and with what the remit was at the beginning. But I would be interested to know really what you think of it, and whatever you think is completely fine. My don't please don't
Thanks, Dan.
hurt my
I was
feelings.
I was gonna think what I was gonna think anyway, but I
Good.
appreciate your giving me the okay to think what I want to think.
Well, it's not much me for you to think what you want to think, but when you're in a forum like this, sometimes people sugarcoat things, and I just
Oh
want to
yeah,
make
no,
sure that
whatever. But well,
you know,
one, to there's no need for me to sugarcoat anything. I am what? How many days have we been talking about this topic? For me, since I've been a part of the crew, that many days old, learning about Mento, period. And so I was taking advantage of just being a sponge and asking different questions in different ways. And so when Jahmi sent us the recording, the album to listen to today, it was
Which
perfect
album
timing.
did she send you?
It was
great
Which one
expectations.
of them?
great expectations was the name.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
That was just one aspect of it.
Yeah,
right.
that
And
was great.
so we were so I was on my way, I was in the car, so it was a perfect time for me to listen to it. And when I was just listening, I was listening. She sent it on YouTube, so I'm not looking at the imagery. All I'm doing is listening to it, and immediately I am just like, oh, okay, this feels really good as a driver. I'm like, this feels really good to listen to, and they gave you the option to listen to the whole thing. There wasn't any songs that I felt like I wanted to skip to the next song. It wasn't like I was like, oh, okay, well, I see where this one is going, because after I started listening, I'm like, oh, okay, so these are covers, but they were covered in such original ways that the songs came to life all on their own. And so I listened to it from beginning to end, and I listened to it once in the car, and then when I was cooking dinner, I listened to it again. And the points that I wrote down were it made me feel like I was on a Caribbean vacation. I
Hmm.
said the lead vocalist immediately gave me reggae, but that was before I had done a research. I should say Jamaican Johnny Cash, not reggae Johnny Cash, Jamaican Johnny Cash, and that was before I heard the cover of Ring of Fire. That was before that. Just so you know, it wasn't like I heard Ring of Fire and then I was like, oh, Johnny Cash. Now it was like that first song. I was
I like
like,
your ear.
he's
Yeah,
giving me
that's on point right there.
yeah. I was like, he is giving me, who is this? I was like, oh, this is Johnny Cash all day, all day. I'm like, I feel it. Um, no genre does covers better than Now I Know Mento slash reggae. I don't feel like anybody
Rock
covers.
steady. Definitely rock steady.
Yeah, like all that they nobody covers better. So that was another thing. The music itself felt bluesy without it being sad or hard. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but
Hmm.
that's the feeling that I got from it. Like I didn't feel like I wanted to go, you know, go beat anybody down, even though some of the topics, I know it could be political and all that kind of stuff, but just the feeling from the music, that's what I got. And the familiarity of the songs gave griot continuing traditions type of feeling to it, because we if some people know some of the songs that are being covered, and so there's a familiarity to it, and it just was like somebody else was telling a story, and it was really pulled me in. And lastly, where can I go to dance to that? And that was my things that I came up with.
Well, the answer to that is the Bush Bar. That's that's where they
Where's
go.
that? Put it
It's
in the chat.
well, uh, the Bush Bar is at Geejam, which is where the album was recorded, which is where Dale used to work. But that's your comments are wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate them. Uh,
Copious notes for sure.
I would love to,
That's the
I would love
writer.
I
I
want
would
to tell
love
you
to
about
share you
Albert.
guys my experience creating it, starting it, and also touring the album because that is interesting. It has been an evolution in my life, changed a lot for me.
That's
It expanded
beautiful.
my thinking. So I would love to share you guys that, and it also ties into also why I'm generally open-minded, but also skeptical, and also very free creatively.
Hmm.
Right.
For sure. So, Nikita, it's your turn. How did you experience the
Big up
album?
yourself, Nikita.
Hello, hello. Um, so I just want to preface this by saying, similar to Reggae Moms, I first learned about Mento when we first had Dan on the podcast. And so um, when we were preparing for that podcast, I remember I was in LA celebrating Jahmi Roc and her graduation. And so she put it on in the car. And according to her, I fell asleep. And I felt very bad because I was like, why would I fall asleep? So then when I today was a really rough day, long story short, because of climate change, the rain is really intense and I couldn't see while I was driving. So I was very uneasy and unnerved. And
Mhm.
so I put it on to just be, again, to prepare for our podcast today. And I just started calming down. My nervous system was resetting in a very interesting way. So I had it on repeat for about 3, 4 hours, and listening to the songs and trying to understand. Well, we talked about this on the podcast before, just the impact of music and sound on the body. And so it made me wonder a lot about what was the intentionality around putting the sound together in the different ways for the different songs. And I also am not as versed in music in some ways. And so I didn't realize that a lot of them were covers, which is something that I struggle with, because if I don't know the original, then I don't know it's a cover. But it was just so well done that I really am curious about what the process was to put those sounds together, put the rhythms together in such a meaningful way, to the point where it helped me relax after driving through a thunderstorm. So that's genuinely my reactions to it. I enjoyed it. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Big up yourself.
So,
Who
Dizzle,
else, who else wanna say?
I want you to talk about what you said you were going to talk about with, like, your total experience with the thing. I was involved with the project at the very beginning, but one of the things I would like to tell everybody about before Dizzle sort of talks, and I hope this is okay, Dizzle. I want to talk because Heidi, something you said about the lead singer Albert Minot, and I just want to tell everybody a little bit about Albert, because he was really one of the dynamic pieces of the project. Uh, Albert grew up in Port Antonio, and from when he was a child, he was touched by tourism. So when the cruise ships would come into, he told me that when the cruise ships would come into Port Antonio, the white tourists, would throw coins into the water, and he would dive for the coins, and that was sort of his introduction. And then and Albert is a well was he died a few years ago. He died, I think, in 2021, but he had like a very his body was very interesting. It was very thin and languid, and he had a dancer's body. And I think his first gig in tourism, because that's where he first kind of got his start. He was a stick dancer, but he was part of a floor show, And so, in a floor show is essentially an imagined, it's a form of exoticism in a way for, the tourist gaze to engage with the exoticness of the place that they've gone. And that's the part that Albert played. And, he would be, he told me that he would, put sort of like skeleton makeup on himself sometimes. And he would wear like a breadfruit leaf over his crotch and would dance on sticks for people. And that was, his function in the floor show until he became a fire eater. He would eat fire. And so, when I got to know Albert, he had not a lot of teeth. And this is something of, Jamaicans of a particular, if they live in country and they've eaten a lot of sugar cane, they'll lose their teeth because, for whatever reason they've lost teeth. But I don't know that that was the case. I think that, Albert, like his dental condition was a byproduct of his being in tourism, and sort of, keeping kerosene in your mouth probably isn't good for your oral health. And so he had a lot of oral issues. But Albert had an incredible sense of style, and he had and because he grew up in a touristic frame where his employment depended on his ability to engage with audiences of all sorts of backgrounds. He had a real talent for showmanship in a way that like is very old fashioned. So, just to do a shallow dive into tourism, Jamaica tourism, music in Jamaica tourism really took off in 1934 when Prohibition in the United States ended. You didn't have to go to Jamaica to, have a drink anymore. And so, the Glass Bucket Club opened up, and other clubs opened up after that really prioritized this sort of vertical integration of tourism, but also invested heavily in entertainment as a draw for Jamaica to bring people out. And that's when the floor shows really started taking off. And so from then on, you have like a professional class of touristic entertainers that really sort of reached its zenith in the 50s. If you ever And probably the best, most accessible way to listen to that was a band called the Silver Seas Orchestra. There's a hotel in Orchard Rios called the Silver Seas, and they had a professional band. Oh, they had a couple different bands. Actually, one of them was called the Silver Seas Orchestra, which was headed by a guy named Lord Jellicoe, who was a great performer. And the other band was the one, Lord Composer. And Lord Composer was the person who first commercially recorded Hill and Gully, which we talked about in the last podcast. And then once tourism really sort of, I don't know, metastasized in the 60s in its own way, the sort of professional class of Mento musicians sort of slowly began to die off. But Albert was sort of, in my opinion, probably one of the last living people of his generation, of that professional class of touristic entertainers. And so it was a really great privilege to work with him and know him and sort of get a sense of his craft. But all the issues that we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, Albert essentially internalized and lived through, and he was discovered by John Baker, who was the owner of Geejam, because he was living next door, or he was performing at the hotel, I guess one or two hotels over, and John is a pretty great judge of talent, and he understood what Albert could do, just in terms for a project like this, and he invited him or he drafted him into the project, however you want to describe that process. But Albert was really sort of, I would say, the performance heartbeat of everything. And then of course we had the other Jolly Boys, Johnny and Powda, who were well, Johnny was an original member, but Albert came much later. Johnny was, I think, one of the foundational members of the band, and then Powda was somebody who came along in the '80s. And joined the band just before they were again, quote unquote, discovered by a guy named Jules Shear, who recorded them as part of the world music boom And so they put out, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 records in the late 80s and early 90s that, got, again, international audiences thinking about Mento in sort of a, I don't know, premiere sort of way. So the Jolly Boys are an interesting band because they've had several sort of iterations,
Several versions, you know.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
like
like
multiple versions of the Jolly
yeah,
Boys.
yeah. You have the
Michael
first
was
version, involved with when they were the Swamp Island, the Navy Island Swamp Boys, when
for Errol Flynn.
yeah, when Errol Flynn was sort of like, the Jamaica's greatest tourist, as Charles Hyatt once told me. Uh, then when independence came along, they competed in the early years of festival, and so that was like a different iteration of the group. And then, like, one member split off and went to St. Anne and had his own version of the Jolly Boys there, whereas the Port Antonio one was still, the Port Antonio one. And then, they sort of trudged on like that for a while. And then, they had their renaissance in the 80s and 90s with the world music boom. And they had a second renaissance with us, at Geejam in the 2000s. And, in a way, they're sort of a typical Mento band in that, like, you have leadership, and that, when members die, they bring in new members, and sort of like the band keeps going. And so, but they're a remarkable bunch of musicians and a remarkable bunch of people. And Albert, at the time when we were doing the thing, he was the lead singer, and he really brought, I think, the band's character, in a way that, if it wasn't for Albert, the whole thing would not have worked, I would say. And, Dizzle, you might disagree with me, but, like,
I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at it, I mean, Mento music, as we know it, is one of our folk music forms, It's indigenous to Jamaica. Mento is similar to calypso, it's the same thing, different islands. Yeah, hold on, Dan, hold on. Hold on, you know the thing, Dan. Hold on. You know the thing. It come from Africa, marinated in the Caribbean. Trinidad have them version. Jamaica have
I like
our
your camera.
version.
It's doing, like, this thing when,
Yeah.
I'm doing it manually.
Cuba have their own
It's
version.
not the same.
No, it's
And also in Mexico, I've heard music from Mexico that sound exactly like Mento. But that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other thing. Oh, what you want to say?
Well, so I would say that, like, people overplay and I said this in the last podcast, people overplay the calypso-ness of Mento because, to put it in stark terms, they're brown bodies singing in English. And
Yeah.
when you get that, I think that to the tourist gaze, or to the sort of white, foreign person, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, it looks the same." And it's very easy for people.
But hold on,
like, when somebody from foreign says it's the thing, then they go, "Oh yeah."
But there's a DNA, Dan. There's a DNA behind the
I
music.
understand the African DNA. I mean, like, I understand.
But
like,
also,
I agree. I agree. And also because Caribbean peoples were already moving back and forth post emancipation and stuff like that for work. Like, how many times Cubans went to Jamaica,
even before
all of that.
emancipation.
So that's an important point, because, like, again, how far away is Trinidad from Jamaica? Very far. But, like, I think one of the barriers to understanding why Calypso and Mento are different is a linguistic barrier. Because if you look at, when I listen to, like, early Mento recordings from the 50s, like the early ones, I definitely hear Calypso songs that are sung, but I listen to them and I go, you know what? I kind of know why they're there. And that's, it's a very cheap way of showing that relationship, or not a
So
relationship.
you disagree that there's a relationship between islands.
I gotta finish my thought.
Sorry.
So,
Sorry.
but, like, when I listen to the music, I hear a lot of Cuban son. I hear way more Cuban son than I hear Trinidadian, like, rhythms.
Okay.
When I listen to, like, say for example, calypso from the 30s, the poetic structure of the music is different.
Mm.
The linguistically, when I listen to the music, the rhythms are different. Like the way the rhythms stack. I mean, like, mento is essentially like a polyrhythmic rhythm or polyrhythmic music. So like then there are different parts that are stacked up, and you can have like the six main parts or whatever, how many parts, or you can have two of them. But like they're sort of instrument specific, and I just like hear them, just from having been around mento music a lot. But when I listen to like son from the 30s, particularly son from the 30s, I go, oh yeah, that introduction, that's something that the Jamaicans picked up. And then
Mm.
when I listen to like endings like da-na-na-na, ba-na-na, that's like a Cuban ending in son music. I mean, that's just
Mhm.
like a thing. And I wasn't convinced of this until I started looking into patterns of migration between Cuba, Jamaica, and Haiti in the
Mhm.
30s when all this begins to tease out. And and there's a music in Haiti called Troubadour music, which sounds virtually identical to Mento with a virtual identical instrumentation that has virtually identical instrumentation to Mento and to soul music. Like in the rumba box, again, you don't get the rumba box in Trinidad.
No.
That's Cuba, Haiti, Jamaica. I mean, so like to me, like it's a Northern Caribbean thing, but like people have not really explored these relationships because there are a few people who speak patois, Creole, and Spanish. And I don't speak Spanish or patois, Creole, but like I have listened to the music, and my advisor in graduate school was a Haitian music specialist, and I've talked to friends and I've been to Cuba, and to me, like I look at that and I go, if you're open to hearing it, there's a much more obvious constellation of influences than calypso, and it's and the calypso story, the calypso, yes, there are calypsonians who went to Jamaica. Yes, calypso is was important in Jamaica, but to me, the influence of calypso in Jamaica has much more to do with the circulation of commercial recordings than it does with actual calypsonians visiting Jamaica. And there were calypsonians who visited Jamaica from the 1920s, but it wasn't like, they weren't going there all the time. They were going there as sort of like, performing in larger venues. They weren't people who, these weren't performances that like, normal everyday working class people went to. Whereas like, if you were migrants coming back from Cuba, these were people who were playing music in communities. Music is a living thing, and then bringing it back home and then spreading that music around. That to me is a much more, to me is much more likely and probably more important influence than Calypso. And to me, Calypso was really a marketing term that was introduced in the late 30s and took off in the 1940s as a way of selling English language music made by brown and black people in Jamaica to foreign tourists. And it was just a straight up marketing term.
Like growing up,
And I don't think Trinidadians are open to this, by the way. I think Trinidad, like after the Hill and Gully thing came on, they're like, oh, you see Trinidadians, and they're like, oh yeah, well, they're just stealing our music, and this is just calypso, and
you know,
I just don't think that they're seeing the forest for the trees. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
growing up in Jamaica, meant a calypso. As a Jamaican, I mean, it wasn't,
They're
there
synonymous
wasn't
terms.
any difference. There wasn't
I
any
know.
difference.
I understand.
The,
And if you're on and when I went to the North Coast, if I was to go to a hotel and I said, "Can I? Where will I find your Mento band?" Anybody I talk to in a hotel would be like, "What are you talking about?" And I'd be like, "Oh,
it's
the
a
Calypso
calypso,
band."
they're not.
Yeah, and they go, "Oh yeah, down by the pool," you know, and that's where I'd find them. But like the at some point, and it happened in the '60s. Well, in the '50s, it was coming on, but in the '60s, I would say that's when the word calypso became hardwired into in the Jamaican consciousness as the name for indigenous metal music.
But even
And
Stanley was marketed as calypso.
Stanley Beckford.
Yeah, more than mental.
Yeah, but I knew Stanley very well, and if you talk to Stanley, he would say that he was a Mento singer. Like
Yeah, I know, but
I know Stanley extremely. I drove Stanley Beckford back to his house in St. Catherine from Maypen the night of Vincent Price's funeral, and Vincent Price is the singer and clarinet player who was on the sample for Hill and Gully that the genius sampled. Like I know Stanley.
It's like we're having a little bit of a technical glitch.
I mean, and how it is placed, how it is marketed, because most times, I mean, the internet and everything is very open now, so there's more access to information. But back then, we relied on what the gatekeepers, because
Yes.
remember, in this new age now, there are no gatekeepers, or the gatekeepers are only the tech companies or the billionaires. But back then, you had other type of gatekeepers who
The Jamaica
directed
Tourist
everything.
Board,
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
JTB.
Yeah.
True.
JTB.
I
I mean, like
also I like to add also that Jamaica, um tourism in Jamaica, right? Tourism boomed, you said, after the prohibition, right? But
yeah,
also boomed a lot around independence,
yeah,
the
Yeah.
1950s.
Actually, it boomed once Cuba became communist because
yes,
now the
yes.
casinos and all, because really Cuba was the
Yeah,
go-to. Jamaica was not the focus point. It was a
You know,
secondary tourist
you are
spot. It wasn't
that's
you are
until
correct.
absolutely
Fidel
right. You're
Castro
absolutely, and
kicked
I had a
out the foreign blah, blah, American, because he didn't kick out European industries like
yeah.
hotels that were catering to Europeans, like Spanish, people from Spain, whatever. But once Cuba became communist, then tourism started to focus more on Jamaica because that's the second closest island from the US.
You're
And
abs-
TJ on the other
you're absolutely
end
right about
of the
that. You're
coast
absolutely right about,
in
And also,
Tijuana.
I
the
definitely have not
Jamaica
explored
Tourist
that
Board
angle enough. You're
headquarters
absolutely right.
was the JTB headquarters. You know where it was located?
Mm.
Where?
In Port Antonio.
Oh, really?
You know
Oh,
that?
wow.
Port
I
An-
did
Okay.
not know that.
Nobody knows this, but until about 2000 and something, I think I have to look up again. It existed in Port Antonio. Port Antonio
Wow.
is where tourism basically
Right.
boomed
Right.
and started. You have
Right.
Sandals and you have Nickel, and all of those other commercial places existed after. But tourism. Remember, banana trade, all of that stuff. Everything really evolved around Port Antonio. So
Mm.
I've had a lot of conversations with Albert, Powder, Johnny. When we're on tour, we're in the tour bus, sometimes we used to just sit down and talk to them. So,
Yeah,
Johnny, I would have said, Albert, how was the war? How was the World War II? What was it like? Used to ask him one more question. How was this? How was that? And they used to just tell me, and I mean, back then, I mean, obviously, mental music got relegated after. I mean, mental music in general was mainly represented after a while as Jamaican folk music. So Ilangole, Linston Market, all of these songs, they were in mental form. A long time ago, I'm gonna see all of them songs in mental. And for us as Jamaicans, that's why Ilangole is so popular, because we used to hear it on Sunday on that TV show on TVJ on
Ding
JBC.
ding. Well, yeah,
Mhm.
So
The Hill and Gully ride,
yeah, exactly. And
and
there's a
and
Sammy
yeah.
dead, and all of them
Mhm.
Dame
tune.
pa piece of corn in
Yeah, and also a lot of
it.
these mentor songs are not only in mentor form, they're in reggae form, they're in ska form, they're in
Mhm.
rocksteady form, some dance. Also, even Ilangoli, Elephant Man have a Ilangoli version a couple
Not
years
so
ago.
much Rocksteady, interestingly enough.
I
It's
mean,
it's
not so much, but because Rocksteady was more based upon, it was like
It was like
it
more
was more about
Motown
love.
and soul music
Yeah, yeah,
covers. Yeah.
yeah. It was,
no,
but
it was a
also
different kind of diversion. But
yeah,
when reggae hit, like it, what's interesting to me is that uh, I found an article from in the Star newspaper from 1968 where the Pioneers had just put out a new track, and the journalist, and I don't remember her name, but she called it neo mento music, And to me, I was like, oh, that makes sense because like the musical background sounded just like men. In fact, all early from late 67 up until like 1969, 1970, a lot of reggae, I mean, I would say most reggae to me sounds a lot like Mento music that's been electrified.
Some
Like
of Bob Marley earliest songs were mental.
Oh yeah, and ska. And
Yeah,
ska.
and ska. Like
Yeah.
Stir Up, the first
And
version of
actually, all those,
Stir It
that's
Up.
what I say, like the legend, those songs have been, whatever you hear from the Legend album of Bob Marley, they didn't even start out roots like that. They started out much faster tempo because it was ska. They were wearing suits, no, they didn't even have locks yet when they did those songs, right?
Yeah,
you listen to is it Scott Jerk? The one of the early Wailers tracks where they say skank quadrille, like you do hear like sort of references to Mento in there,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't. There are not a lot of early Marley tracks that are Mento music to me, but like one there's one that where he takes a Count Lashes song and changes the lyrics. So like rock steady easy, that one. When first I heard rock steady, it chilled me to the bone. Um, that was a version. That was a version of a song that Count Lasha, the great Mento composer, wrote, and he called that Calypso Cha Cha Cha, which again is like to me it's like it's the same. It's Marley took Lash's song, changed the lyrics, but like when I listen to Lash's version, it's in a way it's sort of like a cynical we're going to take these two foreign things and like we're uh, and have it the punchline in Lash's songs will have a cha cha of our own, and he calls it Calypso Cha Cha Cha. It's I think Bob Marley would understood that really well, but like Bob Marley also grew up in like rural St. Anne. He grew up around Mento musicians. I mean, like we know who the Mento musicians he grew up around were, like and they were recorded. Like I think Ken Bilby was the one who recorded them. I mean, if they are indeed the same musicians that Bob Marley would have grown up around, but like he didn't grow up in a vacuum, and he understood that music really well. He was just moving in a different direction. He also lived in America for a little while in the '60s, which I think took him out of the equation in Jamaica, and I think gave him a different perspective as well. But like that's I think a conversation for a different time.
So Dan, all right. I wanted to kind of explain it from my standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah, take it over, Dale. Let's hear more. And tell us a little bit more about that tour. Who were you touring with?
All right,
Sade.
we'll soon get to that, but yeah, good evening everybody again. So mental music for me, I grew up, you know, just knowing it and feeling it. I went to Enamale College of Music. I remember being in class and learning about, the calypso artists, the mentor artists, and everything. Learning how to play the drums, listening to the music over and over. Before that, it was just folk music. Mentor was just folk music, but the feel was kind of ingrained in our culture, the feel of mentor. So when I spoke earlier about there's a relationship between all of them, I'm talking about feel. I'm talking about the DNA. I'm not talking about exact musical elements of it. The DNA and the DNA I'm referring to is probably the count pattern on the clave. How you count African music came over to the Caribbean and set a foundation for all of these musical forms, which kind of turned into something else in its own indigenous way. So whilst just like, for example, nowadays you would have like trap music, right? Trap music in America is in, but a variant of that is trap dancehall, and a variant of that is probably drill.
And narco
Brother.
trap,
Huh?
like narco trap in
Yeah.
Mexico.
So
Right.
and but it has, there's a DNA and a vibe between all of it. So that's what I was
Right.
referring to. So in terms of when I just came to Geejam, as Dan explained, I met the Jolly Boys in December 2008. And the Jolly Boys were performing at the Bush Bar. And the Bush Bar is a restaurant at Geejam Hotel in Port Antonio. And the Jolly Boys been there for years. They were the house band for Earl Flynn. They were playing in various hotels. They were playing around. They were just playing to make money. They were doing gigs every week at this hotel, that hotel to make a living. So one day, John had some friends, from the UK, some rich friends who ran a big record label, that did punk and all of that stuff. So he invited them over to the Bush Bar, and he invited them to play. He invited them the same weekend I was there because I just came there. John was trying to entice me to work at Geejam. I just agreed and said, okay, you know. So I was there, The Jolly Boys set up in the Bush Bar in a little corner. There was Johnny on the rumba box, Albert just there, just singing, no microphone or anything, playing guitar and singing, everything is all acoustic, nothing mic'd up or anything. There was Powder there with the rumba box, there was singing, just vibing, people were there. And John was there with his friends, who were, big time, record label guys, Wallace, Mark Jones. And they were sitting and I said, wow, this sounds good, we should do something with it. So I was there. I just came on board, agreed to work with them. John needed a project to work on because, he's just getting the studio back together. I just wired up the studio at Geejam because the person who was there before left it, and did an incomplete job of sitting at the studio. So that weekend I wired up the studio, recorded some songs. I said, hey, we should put them in a studio. When they were there, we should put them in the studio and record something. So I went in the studio like the next day, mic up everybody. I know I've listened. I know Mento. I'm a drummer. I went to music school. I know about drumming. I've been trained in all of that. I love music. I listen to it. I love listening to all kind of Jamaican music and other stuff. So went in the studio, mic'd up everybody properly. All the guys recorded them, recorded a bunch of songs, recorded about 25 songs because I just recorded like 3 hours of them just playing. And they were in the room and just capturing everything. The thing that stood out while we were recording them was Albert's energy. So behind all that mental vibe, there's a bunch of mental bands and there's mental all over. But, Albert just had this like energy, like, when I'm singing, I'm singing a song and I'm put, Albert is a performer. He's a fire dancer, he's a performer. Albert used to tell me, say, yo, Albert loved Nat King Cole, Frank Sinatra. The man loved jazz, the man listened to all that. Yo, me and Albert used to just sit down and listen to jazz. Albert loved it. Albert loved ballads, you see me? Albert recorded a tune upon this rhythm and they even have Egyptian pan as well, Albert, I even recorded Albert on a dancehall tune one time, But Albert is this kind of guy with this youthful energy and so on. So that was evident with the Jolly Boys. Like, they had that youthful vibe. I was about 21 years old at the time. I was young. I had some success in the music industry working with Rihanna. Had a big tune with Egyptian, Serious Times by Egyptian. Had a bunch of stuff that's just going on, and my career I was just looking for the next thing to do. So we're there in the studio. Albert was electric. Behind Albert is not even just about Albert, because Albert is a frontman. But behind Albert, you have Johnny who was there just cool and collected, just playing a rumba box, and so on. So it's a nice synergy. Then you had Powder, who was like, he was this cheeky little guy with the maracas, but even though he's just playing the maracas and he's dancing and singing back up and, in facial expressions and him dancing.
Perfect rhythm.
yeah. And then at the time there was the other banjo guy who was kind of, no disrespect to him, was just normal.
So in
and then Albert was playing the guitar.
Well, in fairness, I think his name was Egbert.
Yeah.
And he, I had, so a couple years before, well, I would say So that was 2008. When I was living in Jamaica, it was 2002, 2003, and I was involved with a thing at Devon House, and so Charles Hyatt and the Institute of Jamaica. Well, the Institute of Jamaica had this Mento in May evening of music, so we invited 4 Mento bands. Charles Hyatt was the MC, and the Jolly Boys were one of the bands, and Egbert was there, and they were treating him like, again, like, sort of like you would expect a Mento band too. Like, the Mento bands tend to be like, they're multi-generational members most of the time in these bands, and when the older musicians begin to phase out because of health issues, then the younger musicians will, keep them in the fold as long as they can, but be very protective of them. And so Egbert was somebody who, and I think that was his name. I
think that's his name, yeah.
Yeah, but I think he had Alzheimer's, and that was beginning to become a factor around 2003. And so like they were keeping him in the fold, and he could still play, like, but he was no longer. You could tell that he was once a great banjo player, because from just the chords that he was the chord ideas that he had, as a banjo player myself, I'd be like, oh, this is somebody who obviously has, like, the patterns and the memory to be able to do this, but like the physical side of it is, he's obviously losing. And I tried to have a conversation with him, and there was not a lot there to have a conversation with, and it was somebody who was clearly.
Dan, the thing is, I remember Egbert, I recorded him. The problem wasn't.
I remember listening to those recordings.
The problem wasn't his ability to play, because if you ring up any of those Mento repertoires, any song, I Am Bar, anything, and just really taught and play, The problem was, you know what? There wasn't any problem at that first time. I remember recording those 27 songs in about 2 hours, right? There was no problem, Yep. But the thing is, that was traditional Mento. That was Mento as we know it.
And for this project, you had to be flexible in a way that I don't think. But hold on,
the project, the modern Mento project evolved.
Yeah,
modern Mento project, it evolved from just recording a bunch of Mento guys in a studio. That when I recorded those songs, John came to me and said, hey, let's try to, write or do some original songs. Let's hear what original songs Albert have. So I brought him in the studio again, I use Albert alone, and he sang. Albert always had some songs like Evening Dress and all of those songs which are ballads. He loved ballads. He was always singing soulful stuff. That's why I brought up the references, the jazz references. So I recorded him, and I recorded the songs that he wrote, and the songs are okay. The lyrics were very basic. There weren't anything to build on. So all of this occurred in one weekend. And so the next day after that, they said they came up with the idea after sitting at the Bush Bar, remembering the guys playing. I said, hey, we should probably send this into the studio and record, a version of, let them record Rehab, do a version of Rehab, by Amy Winehouse. Now, for me, I was like, what? Do a version of Rehab by Amy Winehouse? I was like, are you crazy? My background before that was, mainly producing reggae and dancehall music. So coming into the space, I understand recording a Mento band and just recording them in the traditional sense, but getting these guys to the Rehab. So I brought them in the studio to play Rehab. They weren't getting it all wanted. But Albert, one thing about Albert though is that with his influences, he wasn't just a normal Mento guy. His influences was more than that. Albert was playing minor chords in his Mento songs. you
He
know,
did, yeah,
where
which is
a lot of
interesting.
mental musicians never did that. It's all major chords, 1 1 4 5, 1 6 4 5. You know, I mean, it's just all
His
major chords.
his minor chord was like a relative minor substitution for major chords, and he
Always,
did it
like
all
at
the
the end
time.
of the song, them I'm going a little, breakdown into like the minor chords and all of that. That was
Yeah.
Albert.
He
But
wasn't singing minor key mentos, but he would just so everybody knows
no,
he would
you
he
play the
would he would
major,
play
you
a
play
minor
the
chord
major chord.
substitute for major chord.
Yeah, you play the
Yeah,
major chord, you go into the minor equivalent. And
yeah.
for who don't understand, in musical scales, you have minor chords that are relative to major chords.
So
For
instead of a C
example, the
major
key
chord, you
of
play A
C
minor chord.
major is related to A minor.
A minor, yeah.
The chord of F major is related to D minor. I mean, you can study the rest of the musical scale. So Albert was kind of like okay, but the other thing is mental music. A lot of the mental songs were mainly in major chords, and the vibe of mental music
Always.
was very happy, jovial, unserious at times, and so but Albert had this edge with this minor thing. But I am a reggae and dancehall producer. A lot of reggae and dancehall is in major chords. Um, rehab. Um, Rehab is in a major chord, minor chord. You know. So I'm in the studio, and I think Albert was easy to work with. I played the song for him a couple of times. I went on my drum machine at an MPC, set it up. Sukam, I'm on a podcast. So. Zane, say hi, everybody. So I was on I was in the studio and I started playing the drum pattern, like on the drum machine and the rehab. This was the first song, and the first song we can refer and call Modern Mento. And the reason why it's Modern Mento is because it's just a modern take on it, you know. And I said, okay. They said the John told me do M1 or something. I thought it was crazy because I was saying, what is this? This is foolishness. This is like I thought it was gimmicky. I thought it was a joke, But I like a challenge. So what I did, I went into the studio and I said, all right, let me just do something, you know. I just built the drum pattern on a drum machine, and then I sampled the rumba box, I let them play on it first, but I said I want it to sound bigger, so I sampled the rumba box and played the pattern myself, you know, and then played the percussions over it, and who played banjo on that song? It was you, Dan, right?
Well, so you originally you
Oh,
had
I
a
played
keyboard,
keyboard
yeah,
banjo on it.
and then I came in and I played real
Yeah.
banjo over it, and then I think in the final mix, I'm credited on the track, but I think that the real banjo is turned down very low, so
So
you
no,
really
no.
only hear the
You
keyboard.
were the banjo. You were the banjo player in the final thing. There's a lot of things about this song that a lot of people don't know. Because I did a lot of frequency manipulation on it. That is secret. I did a lot of summon mixing, running through the boards, ducking into a few frequencies coming up so you can have that real big
Raga
sound.
raga,
You
but
know?
still heavy bass.
Yeah, I was just experimenting because I thought that what John was telling me to do was crazy. It was foolish. So I said, all right, you know what? Let me just do something,
It's
just
visionary in a
experiment.
way.
I played a drum pattern, find some drum samples, played some drums on it, the drum loops and all of that, and I set up the drum set and played over it and everything. The banjo that was on it in the first one, I remember now. I even had piano on it. The first version had a piano on it. Then I had a banjo behind it, and the banjo was kind of playing, and then and I play like a piano kind of like vibe in it because the original rehab was different. But I knew the original rehab song. But when I'm in the studio working on a song, I don't listen to the original and try to recreate it. I always like to just go off of inspiration and vibe that I feel, you know? So on all those modern mentor songs, I probably listen to the original ones,
You
all of the
you you
songs.
you and I remember you and I having some very spirited arguments over the details of a couple, like should I stay or should I go, was one, and then
Oh yeah, because you are purist.
well, no, because well, in a way I am purist, but like at the same time I thought to myself, there's the thing in this track that like so I every single one of my friends is a Clash fan. Like literally everybody I know loves the Clash. So
That's the first time I heard of Clash.
so no, so but like
I
literally
like the
like
Clash too, actually.
I have like
I like the
all like
Clash
I
too.
know way too many punk rock people who love the Clash to like so like if like that like da 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 like if that gesture isn't there they're gonna it's like they've lost something and so
Yeah,
like
but
so like we
that's
argued
the
about
difference
like that
between you.
particular point.
That's the difference, and I think that is the
So that's not
beauty.
me being purist. That's me being like,
No, 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 Ola. But
we're trying to
that
reach a
old purist
market,
argument,
and
that old purist argument is a whole joke between me and Rick,
yeah, oh yeah,
because my approach to it is like whatever,
I
anything.
know.
And then I remember that conversation. You wanted to like exact because that was one of the
Not
last songs
exactly. I
recorded.
but it was just like one thing that I wanted. I definitely was like, this has to be here. We could do what we need to do to make this track work, but like this sound needs to be there somewhere.
But listening back to it, and I've listened to the project again. I think the fact that I did not know most of these songs
That was a benefit.
probably gave it a new life,
Oh yeah, no,
a
I think
difference.
that
Because
I think that was
I
important.
took a complete I approached the whole album as if I was working on a new song.
And I think that I was probably brought in to well play the banjo obviously, but also to sort of like uh,
Bring the relevance to it, and
yeah, like another one I remember was Golden Brown, which I think probably is. I mean, for me, it's the weirdest track in the album, but also kind of one of my favorites because first off, it's in 6/8.
yeah.
But the original Golden Brown has like it's there's it most of it's in 6/8, and then I think there's one measure that's I think in 7/8, but I'm forgetting at this point. And we didn't do that on that particular track to sort of like make it easier to. But like I was thinking of it like, well, where else have I heard 6/8 in Jamaica? Well, we in quadrille, the first figure of quadrille is going to be in 6/8, so like I want to bring that sort of like first figure quadrille vibe into it. And then we were able to get Cedric Brooks, the brilliant saxophone and flute player, and he came in and played flute over it. And I was talking to him, and I was like, "This is kind of the vibe I want." And he was able to sort of Cedric, first of all, I mean, he's a Rasta. He was on the Mystic Revelation of Rastafari record, the Ground Nation record, but like in light of Saba and everything. But he is a person. He also put out an album that had a Mento element to it, and he really had a love and a really deep understanding of Mento music that I I don't want to I don't want to put word. I mean, he's passed now. I think he and I understood Mento in a way that was resonant with each other, and understood that there are challenges to understanding Mento, and I learned about how to listen to Mento a little bit from talking to Cedric. But Cedric, when I talked to him about the quadrille stuff, he immediately knew what I meant and brought that element to this particular track. And so so it was a track where I could say like, okay, well, let's this is not going to be a purist track, from the Golden Brown point of view, but we could move it a little bit more towards the Jamaica side of things. And then, it was one of those tracks that I
I
think
remember Golden
flies under the
Brown,
radar.
like Golden Brown, like I'm a jazz drummer, so like the 6/8, and
Yeah.
you knowing it was good, and then we didn't. So the whole aspect of it is just basically just taking a fresh approach, you know, taking like a reggae covers vibe to it, or reggae people do covers. When people in reggae do covers, like you see like Sanchez and all of them money, I'm not gonna do back everything exactly, Them gonna sing the thing on one rhythm, one chord progression straight through. Even if the original switched the progression or in the middle of it,
Or it has a
a little
bridge or
bridge.
something.
You just do it whatever. So that was my whole approach to it with the mental music, and also the fusion enough, obviously, at the end of it where you laid banjos all over it and stuff was good because you, as a solid banjo player, brought, a scholared approach to it, as well as you knowing the music was good as well. Also, I remember that conversation about the clash. I remember because we were really clashing about that clash
Yeah,
tune,
yeah.
you know,
That was a
and
real argument.
and that was cool, But as you know, anybody who knows me in the studio know that I always win. So, but it was good. All of these things is good for good, like discussing music. Having disagreements. Even like earlier when we were discussing, the dance, the caricature, that weird art thing that we all don't like. I like to look at situations and just have like a broad mindset approach to it. So that with the Jolly Boys, Albert was so open to that. That's what I wanted to bring. Albert was
Yeah,
open to that. The other
yeah.
guys, Powder, he was okay with just chipping in whatever. Johnny was just cool and collected. Most of the album is me and Albert, and any banjo is you and Brutus. Rest in peace, Brutus.
Bruce didn't play banjo on that record because he
He,
wasn't
he,
playing banjo yet.
no, didn't. Oh, Brutus.
No,
Oh, that's why I asked. Brutus played on the
the
classic
traditional,
Mento
yeah, the
ones,
classic one.
which
Yeah,
was also linked to the Great Expectation Deluxe edition that was released
yeah.
in North America. So like the songs like Emmanuel
No, no,
Road,
no. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Jaguar.
He did the classic. Oh, and by the way, I want to mention just real quick. Uh, I couldn't tour because I had my son was born just after the record was finished, so I had to be home to sort of help out with that. And a great musician named Donald Waugh took the banjo parts and toured with the group for a while, and Donald did I think, an admirable job playing the parts on tour.
You're better than all though.
Well, I respect Donald's musician.
Dana was a bit Dana was a bit stiff. I
Yeah,
mean, touring with him the
yeah.
first tour, he was
Well,
just
being on
he's a
tour is different.
drummer, talented player and everything,
Bass
but
player too. Yeah,
you had more feel, I swear, you had more feel to it than Dana. Dana
well,
was
yeah,
very like rudimentary on the but
I respect what Donald did.
yeah, enough respect. Also, Brutus came into the band to play guitar, and
Yeah,
we played.
but no,
Yeah,
Bruce did play
play.
guitar on the
Yeah.
record.
So the Golden Bar. Remember when we were working on Golden Bar, it was me, you, and Brutus in the studio.
I don't think he played on the. I think it was me
You didn't see?
on
Oh
guitar
no,
on
it
that
was
set
you
too.
playing on that. There's
Yeah,
so long ago,
yeah.
But Brutus played on a couple of the songs, and then
No, but so just so everybody knows, Brutus, who passed away a couple years ago, he played guitar with Burning Spear and toured with Burning Spear for many years. But Brutus was it was interesting because he had never played banjo before, and he came along and it was well, so in Mento bands. My experience with Mento bands is like some musicians will come to join a Mento band in a local community after they've retired. So like, you might be like in a rural community and you might have some sort of professional gig, doing whatever, and then you've retired and you retire into the band. Powder was like that. Powder was not a original longtime member of the Jolly Boys. I mean, I think he joined in the 80s. But what had happened was he was a garbage collector and he retired. And like, he worked for like a Jamaica public service on a garbage truck. And he retired and he lived in Port Antonio. He actually lived next door to the lead drummer for the Lion King, which is sort of like an interesting tidbit, Junior Wedderburn. But uh, Powda, shook maracas and sort of like fell in with the Jolly Boys and became like a core member of the Jolly Boys in the 1980s. And like that sort of trajectory is not particularly unusual. And so like what's interesting is that how resonant Brutus his experience was, because he was essentially a touring reggae guitarist who was like a really great reggae guitarist, and then, like he retires and like he sort of settles down, and like his money gig was like he owned gambling machines, and he would at bars, and he'd go collect money.
Just like all of us, just like all of us,
Yeah,
Brutus the same way, grew up listening to Mento, knowing
yeah,
Mento. He started listening to all the songs, playing all the parts and everything, the
yep.
feel. And it's not necessary, he wasn't taught how to play Mento
Oh, no,
in a
no, no.
specific way.
It was in his
He just
core.
felt it
It was
with
core.
us, with all of us, and it was just
Yeah.
so natural on stage. But one thing I should say though, with the
Oh, and he
Jolly
picked up
Boys,
banjo very, very quickly.
the,
He is a talented musician. Just
I just want to say with the Jolly Boys, the approach to it musically, because I know Nikita said that it felt calming. The approach, the technical production approach was more of a reggae approach, but reggae
Mhm.
using mental patterns. So one thing I can tell you that I remember when we started touring with the Jolly Boys in 2010. And I remember the first show that we did in England at Secret Garden Party. So I mean, up until the first show, I had not believed in this thing. I was just doing it. I was just doing ideas, and everybody was like, "Hey, hey, hey," and I was just saying, "Okay, I'm working here. I'm just working with the Jolly Boys. I'm just gonna do it." We did the first show in England. I think you never get to come to that one, and oh my gosh, the crowd was going
was
crazy
this
for the
Electric
Jolly
Picnic?
Boys. Hmm?
Was this Electric Picnic?
It was Secret Garden Party.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Secret Garden Party in England.
Hmm.
People are going crazy over it. Dana played on that show. People are
Yeah.
going crazy. We started because the covers. Why we choose covers? We chose covers because the guys who were selecting it were British guys, were punk guys, and they love all of these covers. Mostly, covers that were popular in Europe,
Mhm.
that were staples, that were big songs,
It probably
Be,
came out of like a similar catalog. I
yeah,
mean, like there was.
most of these songs weren't popular in Jamaica at all.
Not at all. Not at
So
all.
for me, it was pretty new to do a lot of these songs. I went to England and played a set, with about 8 to 10 songs, and oh my gosh, people were running around the venue.
I
People
love
loved
that.
it.
Yeah. No.
People said to me, "Oh my gosh, this song so good." I remember being in the Maldives, and let's talk about culture again, going back to the point. I was on stage in the Maldives and people love it so much. I saw two guys whining on each other. And I was like, "Oh my gosh,
In the
what's this?"
Maldives?
Yeah. But the thing is, it wasn't sexual. It was
I
just
understand,
them
but.
enjoying the thing. It's just cultural
They were feeling
difference.
it. They were
Yeah,
feeling it.
the feedback that I've gotten is that people love it because it's different. It feels like reggae, but it's dancey reggae. So the
Hmm.
modern mentor, I would like to explain it. I feel like with the technicalities of the banjo, the lines, the banjo drive the melody and the vibe. You have the drum and bass, which is also borrowed from reggae. So borrowed by elements from reggae. Another important point is the first set of songs, mentor songs that I did, the modern mentor songs. I was using synthesizers and keyboards. The one that have the most synthesizers are keyboards Rehab. After that, I was told, hey, don't use any synthesizer or
No,
anything. Use natural
I think
sound
that
and
might have
stuff.
been, I think that might have been my influence.
That was your influence?
I think that might have
Well,
been
it
my
was.
influence.
I didn't disagree with it. I didn't disagree with it. So what I did, I just used the banjo, I use the drums, I use that to just create the vibe of the music, to dance the music, to push it, and I think that gives it, a fresh, different sound, a familiar vibe. Even I use rim shots in some of the songs, like reggae rim shots, reggae drum rolls and all of that stuff, and also some of the backbeat and patterns were basically like fusion, you know, and a lot of the rumba box patterns, I sampled the rumba box. I played a little bit more rhythmically with it with the drum machine, and I used drum machine and live drums, and like every track had like congas on it, some bongos. Every track had maracas on it. I
And no
used
track had a djembe on it because I said no.
tracks had djembe on it. We just never told you about it. I mean, come on.
Truth comes out on Jahmi Roc's Jottings, y'all.
The djembe was the bongo of the 2000s, man.
Dan, I did a lot of stuff that you guys didn't know. I did a lot of stuff.
Sure you did, man.
Seriously, but I mean, I'm sometimes defiant in terms of things. So I do stuff in secret. But that Dan was a very good.
It's the way of the engineer, man.
I learned a lot from you, Dan. Speaking with you, working with the Jolly Boys, vibing, rehearsing, all of that. I learned a lot from you and the boys. Rest in peace to all
I
of
learned
them.
a lot from you, absolutely.
They had a whole vibe behind them. If they're in front of you right here, they're vibe. I remember in an airport going to Germany, and our flight was delayed, for about 16 hours, and after like 6 hours, we took out all the instruments and started playing in the airport, and people start like watching us like a concert in London Heathrow Airport. These guys, have that natural vibe with them, and that's the thing. Albert loved dancing, Powder loved dancing, and
Can I also I just want to also acknowledge the work that you put in on tour, but also the work that Rick Elgood put in on tour.
very
Because
important.
Rick was not a member of the Jolly Boys, so to speak, but he was a crucial, I would say, a crucial element of the Jolly Boys' success in that entire production. He did a lot of stuff, and then when it came to touring, I think that, I mean, I wasn't on tour obviously, but I got the sense that he had a very serious role in the organization and making sure everybody got places on time and made it so that people were comfortable to perform. Would
Yeah,
that be sort of a fair assessment?
I
Hmm. Yeah,
I bet
for real.
Dale is saying yes. So this has been an absolutely wonderful, amazing, excellent conversation.
Oh,
And
what?
dare I say it, we need a part three on the Mento train, okay?
Well, Dizzle, whenever you want to come back, I'm
Part
game.
I mean,
three.
there's a lot of aspects around this. There's a lot that you have to share on this. There's a lot that I want to that I've heard from Nikita, which is great for Reggae Moms and Diana. I mean, there's so many aspects of it, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation because there's not enough conversations about this or study. Even the back and forth that we have, there are different perspectives of it, and we need to really talk about it and investigate because what is beating us. And I go back to the thing that we opened on, and we spoke about. There's not enough, what should I say, conversation or outlook on the music, the gatekeeping, the culture. People are just doing whatever they want.
Hmm.
There is not enough documentation on it because what do people know about the culture and the music? They don't know, especially in this day and age. What is on the internet about mental? About the culture, about the music, how it is created, the feel, the vibe. How do you, Dan, how did you get to, be so prolific in Mento or playing banjo? Is there a relationship between, Irish roots and Mento and banjo? You think there isn't, but there
there's
is.
not. There's 100%
There,
not.
there
100%
actually
not.
Oh,
is.
I definitely think there is.
There
There's
is.
Especially when you
You
think
you
about how
no,
many
no,
Irish
no,
were
you
I,
brought
I,
to
are
the
very wrong.
Caribbean as
You're very
no,
wrong.
indentured
no, 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 no,
laborers.
no.
On a linguistic
I'm going to push
standpoint
back
as
very
well.
hard on this because I know it's been very fashionable in the last year or so to attribute the Jamaican accent to Irish, and I think that fails to understand that
Broken
there are a
English.
variety of different Irish accents and there are a variety of different Jamaican accents, and they're just not the same.
No,
And
but
like,
That's not even what I'm talking about.
but like
I'm not even
but
talking about
honestly,
that
like
part.
honestly,
you know
no, no,
that
hold
there's
on,
a
hold on, hold
town
on.
in Jamaica called Irish Town. Irish
No, no,
Town.
no, 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 no,
You've
no,
been
no,
to Irish
stop.
Town? You ever eat Irish potato? Huh?
Look it.
Irish mas? Irish mas?
I understand that there are and the Gansey, like that's an Irish word.
I've been to Ireland and I felt like I was in Jamaica.
I've been to Ireland too, and I
I
don't feel
mean,
like I'm in Jamaica.
yeah,
But they drive the same. They drive
that
the
is
same like they do in
exactly,
Jamaica.
but that is
But
exactly
Yo,
the
that's
point.
different.
I
That's exactly the
cannot.
point. Different
But
perspectives and different school of thoughts and ideas, because for you it is like no, and this is the type of argument that we had when we were making the album.
I understand that, but like what I'm saying,
You're partly Jamaican, mate.
here's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I don't like it when people say like, oh yeah, when Ireland takes credit for Jamaican things because that is a colonial move, and I don't think that like uh, I don't think it's right to equate English oppression, where there was a lot of influence on what happened in Jamaica, to the Irish element in Jamaica. Now people say, oh, Cromwell brought 1,700 Irish people over to Jamaica in the
Which is
17th
true.
century.
Yeah.
But like, look at
And
how
brought
many
a lot of
millions.
Chinese, Indians
Yeah.
brought the
So
weed.
like, I would say that there are way more Chinese, Indian
but
influence.
but yet still it still does have
There's
it's a
more
But it
melting
Southeast.
isn't
pot.
just Jamaica, it's throughout the whole English speaking Caribbean. And look at how many Jamaicans have Irish last names. Like that's
Yeah,
so
A
and
prevalent.
but
melting pot.
there's a reason for that. There's a book called "Whence the Irish of Jamaica" by Joseph J. Williams, where that's talked about why they have Irish last names, and it's not a pretty picture. It's not this sort of like delightful. Oh, we
We
I'm
share.
know
not
that. We
saying
know
that.
that. We
That's
know
not what
that. We
I'm
know that.
yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
slavery and plantation
Yeah.
ownership
Yeah,
that occurred.
Right.
And it's not something, but the fact remains
I think
that
I think
there
I
Jamaica is
think
a melting pot of cultures. You have Chinese, Indian,
I think
Irish.
what Jamaicans and
Yeah,
Irish people have in common is they share a colonial past and they can resonate with each other on that element.
exactly.
Exactly.
But
With the
when we
silicon
Because they're both
no,
islands.
look,
They're
Yes,
both islands.
exactly.
so
They are both islands.
Yes.
but when you say like, oh, Jamaican influence in Irish influence in Jamaica,
There
well,
is influence.
that's a different
Yes.
conversation.
Definitely.
It's a different
Definitely.
conversation. It's a
Definitely.
different,
that
I
far
different
more
can't
nuanced
believe
conversation,
conversation.
Dan,
and
I
it's
can't believe you're not owning up this Jamaican thing, because this would be something so cool to grab onto, mate.
I
He
understand
doesn't
it's
do
cool
Stop
to
gimmicks.
grab
it.
onto, but
Stop
I'm
He
not a
it.
doesn't do
cool
Stop
gimmicks,
person.
it.
okay?
I am like everyone. I can ruin a party
We
just by
like
talking.
green and we like gold.
Okay,
Black,
check
green,
me
and
out.
gold.
So like,
I'm done.
And we like Guinness and Baileys.
All
Albert loves
right.
but the
Baileys.
Guinness in
Check us
Jamaica is
out though.
different. It's a Nigerian Guinness.
I,
It's not the
I
cool
mean,
different
I
Guinness.
can't.
Irish Guinness and Baileys taste much better though.
Dangerous
That's
combination.
fair enough.
Dan and Dale are a dangerous
Bailey sounds
combination.
good right about now. I ain't gonna lie.
Hey, hold on. But
Uh,
before we sign off, Dizzle and I did a lot of talking, and we talked a lot of shit.
yeah,
Does anybody have anything that they want to like
you're
ask
taking the
or
words
comment
out of my mouth,
Any
or
Dan.
anything?
You're
questions?
taking the words out of my mouth. I
Well,
want
then
to
you
turn it over
say
to
it better
the
than I will.
I want to turn it over to the co-host after you have heard this rich history. Any takeaways, thoughts, questions, quarrels, praise, whatever comes to your mind. I'm gonna kick it to Nikita first, then hit Reggae Moms, take it back to Diana, and then I'll close it out.
I appreciate his the recording of history we're doing right now. You know, at the end of the day, whatever word we want to use for griot or storyteller or whatever it may be, that's what we're doing, you know. And so I think in all of the nuance that we've talked about, I just go back to the fact that um, you know, Black people have given so much to the world, and Jamaican culture has given so very much to the world. And just to me personally, and being a little petty, I will always make things emotional because I'm a human on earth.
Boom.
And this music stirs up emotions in me, that have allowed me to heal and reckon with who I was, who I am, and who I will be. So
Right.
learning about Mento is something that allows me to feel connected to my culture in a more meaningful way. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nikita. That is amazing. And thank you for being petty and bring it back to the emotions because I'm right there with you, sis. I am right there with you. Okay. Reggae Moms.
I want to say thanks for the opportunity to be a student and learn something and to have such rich knowledge and information and resources, personal resources into a topic has been very, very wonderful and pleasing. And I'm just thankful to be a part of the discussion and just listen because I don't really have any questions because you guys are just talking about it all. So I'm just soaking it all in. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Reggae Moms. Beautiful.
Thank you.
What's up, Lai?
Um, from a DJ perspective, what I like about the Hill and Gully rhythm is that it's a good collection of music that can resonate multi-generationally, especially um, I come from that, you know, meaning like the family parties where like music was for everybody, right? And even though the children had their own preferences and the adults and the teenagers, at the end of the day, the fact that the songs are cover songs in a sense, so it can resonate with your older generation, and then you got like your Massacre and your dance hall artists who are bringing the slackness element to it, which of course makes it super relatable, right? To like our our people in their 20s and 30s and whatnot. And so I like rhythms like that as a DJ because you have to read the room, and I have DJ different types of reggae, Jamaican, dancehall, roots, European, and Mexico, and there's different tastes and different likes from different people and groups, and so having um, the songs and then the box, now you can have something to connect. You can blend these songs with the original Mento songs and try to bring it where you can play them interchangeably, right? You can do a set as a DJ and play something from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and at the same time blend it with something that is modern, and it becomes a good experience because again, it's always good as a DJ to have a good collection of different music that um, will resonate, relevantly, as well as to like as many people as possible.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for that DJ epistemology. Very amazing, very amazing. And I'm just reflecting on the power of music and legacy, right? For you to talk about the Jolly Boys and the way that you have, they're living right now, though they have passed on to the next transformation, right? Um, just to see the way both of you light up when you talk about them really warms my spirit and makes me happy to know that, you had such beautiful memories of them and that you get to relive those memories in this conversation and every time that you listen to their music. And it just reminds me that when we make music, play music, receive music, we are participating in a timeless endeavor, um, in many ways. And so for our listeners, I want to remind you that Jahmi Roc's Jottings is moving to a new time and day of the week. For our live stream, we'll be giving you 2 new episodes at the first 2 weeks of the month, and then on Kingston12hifi.com we'll have the replays the second half of the month, the last 2 Wednesdays of the month, roughly. You know how months do. Sometimes there are 5 Wednesdays. We're going to figure that out when we get there. But I just want to remind you all that after this podcast, we will be at 5 p.m. PST on Wednesdays live streaming. All right. And I mean, we can't avoid bringing y'all back at this point because we need to hear more about the tour. Okay. We need to hear
Oh
more.
well, yeah, I can tell you something. Me and Albert used to fight for the TV on the tour bus.
Oh God.
Albert always watch westerns, and I wanted to watch Avengers
Oh
or
God.
Marvel or something. You know, Johnny them watch Karate Show, and Jet Li.
hmm
you
hmm
know.
That's
And we
beautiful. And
we
we're
used to
gonna
have
hear
fights on
more
the tour
about it.
bus.
We're going to hear
But
more about it. But until next time, this has been Jahmi Roc's Jottings. Keep your mind rocking, your thoughts swaying, and as always, keep jamming.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody
bless
here.
up,
Thank you for
bless up,
having me
bless
to be
up,
part
bless
of the
up to everybody.
conversation.
Thank
What's
you.
up?
Thank you, Nikita. Dan, enough respect. We have a lot more to
Yes,
talk
sir.
about. You
Yes,
know?
sir.
Raquel, thank you. Reggae Moms, big up yourself. And I
Listen,
want to say, yo, no disrespect to anybody when I said, yo, non-Jamaicans representing you. So all the non-Jamaicans who are representing is not, a hateful jab, I'm just talking about the people who are misappropriating. So, so even big up to everybody. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Take care.